Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abassi. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic and a stroke survivor. And today I had an appointment with the cardiologist. I'm going to be getting a heart monitor implant. So it's about yay big, like an inch and a half, and flat, and they put it right under your skin, and it stays in there and monitors your heart for, I think they said like 3 years is the battery life. And then I think they just leave it in there. So anyway, we went in today for the initial consultation. It was an awesome doctor that we really enjoyed talking to. My husband was Mr. Comedian today, so that was pretty funny. What he said, I'll share with you. His funniest joke of the day was we were sitting in there, and I asked the doctor, "Are you going to be able to see it?" And the doctor misunderstood what I said and said, he thought I said, like, are you going to be able to see me? Like, does it track my whereabouts or whatever? And that's not what I was saying. I was wondering if you could see it under the skin. And I wasn't asking for the purpose of being vain. I was more asking because it's going to gross me out if I could look down and see some sort of device under my skin. Well, he misunderstood me. He's like, no, we care about you, but we don't care that much about you. Meaning, no, we're not going to watch your whereabouts. It's not tracking where you're going or whatever. Anyway, that made my husband think of alien abductions for some reason. And so he said to the doctor or he said to me so that the doctor could hear about how aliens have stopped abducting people and they are now calling themselves cardiologists and they're implanting devices into us so that they can track us and get the information that they need. Anyway, the doctor started cracking up. It was pretty funny. There was a good rapport. They started talking about Pink Floyd and stuff like that. So it was good. And I was pretty sure I wasn't getting it today, getting the actual implant today, because I figured they wanted to talk to me first before they cut me open. So they'll be calling me, they meaning the place where they do it, which is also in DC. They're going to be calling me to schedule the appointment to get that put in me. So, I think I'm not nervous, but it's just unsettling, to know that they're going to stick something in there. So, that's what's happening. Why, Rachel? Why are they doing that? Well, because they never did come up with a reason why I had my stroke. And I got the TEE, which is a echocardiogram, transesophageal echocardiogram. And that is to determine if there's a hole in your heart. And everybody's born with a hole in their heart, and it typically closes, but there's lots of people who the hole doesn't close. And what can happen is if you develop a clot in a vein, one of your main veins, I think, it can go through the hole in your heart to your brain and cause a stroke. Otherwise, the other way that you can have a stroke is if you have AFib and your heart creates a clot that goes to your brain. The only other way, I guess, is if the clot goes through your lungs to I don't know. Anyway, I didn't have a hole in my heart. So this is checking to see if I have AFib. I got the bubble test in the hospital, which did not determine anything, but there was something a little strange, which is why I got the transesophageal echocardiogram. I also got a monitor that I wore for a couple weeks after I had my stroke, and nothing's ever determined anything, but I have AFib in my family. Lots of people, I think all the men. So, they're gonna check for it and see. And I think I feel better putting a monitor, getting it implanted, than I do walking around thinking I might have AFib and I might have another stroke. So I think I'm better off getting the thing put in me. So that's where we're at with that. Yeah, so that's what I did today. So I am real tired. I think my brain is ready to go to sleep, but not before I do our episode today. I did not dance yet today, but I did get a text from one of our listeners who said that she did some dancing today, and that's awesome, and is listening to the book of the month. So, if you're not dancing and you're not listening to the book of the month, I just want you to know that you are one of the few and you need to get with it. Get your shit together, people. So, I will dance after the episode. I like to dance beforehand because it gets me a little more energetic, but I forgot. So, what's today's topic, you ask? Today's topic is about awareness and noticing, but I have a little bit of a twist on this topic today. So let's see how this goes. I think that it's so easy to go through our days without truly noticing what's happening around us or within us. We get really caught up in just the world. I mean, when we were sitting at the lights in DC, so I open my eyes if I'm sitting at the light, unless there's cars going by and then I have to shut my eyes again. But if there's just people walking by, I open my eyes a little bit and I'm just looking at these people who are either sitting in their cars with the music blaring or, walking to and from work. There's people on the scooters and people are just constantly moving, which is why DC is difficult for me as far as my vision goes. But I'm looking at people and I'm like, nobody, I bet you nobody at this very moment is thinking about the moment that they're in, because I don't think that happens often. I don't think people do that a lot. Um, so I wanted to talk about that, like missing the silence that's behind all of the noise, the calm that's underneath the chaos. So I wanted to talk about how can we be more aware of that silence, because that silence is the thing that brings us that serenity. At least it does for me. The quiet is where I find serenity. And so I wanted to talk about that a little more. So one thing that came to mind, and really this topic was one that came up like 2 days ago when I did not record. And so I've been thinking about this for a couple days. And one of the things I was thinking about is how different it feels to meditate in the morning than it does to meditate during the day. And I think it's because, so Thursday mornings, we have a meditation meeting. And when I'm sitting there and I've already let my dogs out, they've eaten their breakfast, they're winding down to take their post-breakfast morning nap, and it's so quiet in the house, and I can hear my bulldog start snoring, and then the morning meditation starts, and I can hear Tamara Levitt from the Calm app, like talking about breathing and being present and all this stuff. And I feel like I could go back to sleep when I do a morning meditation. I almost don't like to do a morning meditation because I already feel a bit calm in the morning. Because it takes me a while to wake up, and if I lay back down, like that's out, I'll be out. I'll go right back to sleep. That's just how I am. Unless I've got something that I'm excited about for the day. So my morning meditations are, it seems like I don't have a lot of noise. I don't have a lot of chaos going on in my brain yet. But as I go through my day and say I'm going to do an afternoon meditation, it's the same thing. It's still like the dogs come with me. We lay down and I hear my bulldog snoring, but it's different because my brain has been so active and telling stories to myself all day long, creating what ifs and completing like the ends of all of these uncertain things that are going on in my life, that when I sit down to meditate, it's a lot more difficult to hear that silence behind the chaos in my head. Um, but I think that it's those moments in the like in the afternoon when life feels so loud and chaotic that I need to practice calming it. Like that's the purpose of meditation, is to practice calming that noise, that loud voice in my head. It makes me sound crazy, but sometimes I feel crazy. One thing that I noticed a couple weeks ago, I was making bagels, and before you put the bagels in the oven, you put either, depending on like, if you're not vegan, you put honey and water and you bring it to a boil, and then you boil the bagels on each side for a brief moment before you put them in the oven. And if you are vegan, then you can use like brown sugar, and you boil the brown sugar in the water, and then you boil the bagels on each side for about 30 seconds. And I was doing this and I was counting while while I was doing all of this, I was counting because I was trying to keep track, and I have a hard time multitasking now, which So I was doing this counting to keep me on track because I had some things boiling, I had some things I was spreading, um, some I can't remember, something on the bagels after I boiled them. And then I've got the ones that haven't been boiled yet that I need to make sure are covered so they don't dry out. So anyway, I'm like counting to keep track of all of this. And I found that counting, like I was so calm. I don't know if you've ever tried it. Like, you know how they say counting sheep? Well, I have never really gotten that whole counting sheep thing. But I realized that counting calms me down. So sometimes when I do my push-ups and actually every night when I do my push-ups and my stretches and everything before I go to bed, which you're well aware of my nighttime routine, I count. I count my push-ups. I count when I'm doing planks, I count those. I haven't been doing planks because my back has been hurting. But when I hold stretches, I count. So that counting, I was not even aware, is calming me down before bed. So I don't know, give it a shot. It's pretty simple. I was talking yesterday about how dancing is so easily accessible. We've got our phones and earplugs and just stick something in there and start, stick something in there. Stick your headphones in your ears and turn on a song and start moving. Like it's really easy and accessible. Well, counting is just, if not more, accessible. If you're feeling stressed out about something, try to count. Just count to 20 and then start over again or something like that. I mean, it's been working for me. So I wanted to share that with you. So it's not exactly about emptying my mind completely, which is what I've always tried to do with meditation, is to just let it all go and try to make my mind almost hollow. Like, if that makes sense, like, but I wonder if it's more just like that. You're focusing on your breathing all the time while focusing on counting. They do that too. While you're breathing, you count to 8, breathe in, count to 8, breathe out, count to 4, that kind of thing. So, anyway, narrowing the focus onto something that's simple. So counting kind of helps for me. So sometimes I like to just sit and listen to silence, the sound of silence. And it, I don't know if you've ever done this. This is another, this is another weird thing, but I'd be interested to know if you have ever felt this way. Have you ever like sat and there's no sound, right? You're listening to the silence, and it's almost like there is this loud buzz in the background of silence. I That might sound weird, but I would love to know if somebody knows what I'm talking about. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's your blood moving through your ears or what it is. Or I maybe that's part of my disorder. I don't know, but there's like this noise that's kind of always there. Silence. Anyway, send me an email if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just ignore me and just think I'm crazy. It's fine. Okay. So listening to silence can be incredibly soothing, but my brain has to cooperate with listening to silence. And if the noise in my head, and I'm not talking about the crazy noise that I was just talking about, but the chaos, the telling stories to myself, completing all the uncertainties in my head. If my brain does not cooperate and say, okay, let's stop completing the stories right now and just listen, be still, and listen to the quiet, listen to the lack of sound. Um, it's it's difficult. I first realized this when I first started trying to meditate at our meditation meetings. At I go to a place called Club 12 in Leesburg, if you're not familiar with the area, Leesburg, Virginia. So when I was still going in person, and I would go to this Friday meditation meeting and I would sit down. I just talked about this recently. And I just had so many stories going on in my head, so much. I was going through my entire day that I couldn't even hear outside the room. Like I couldn't even hear the street, the like traffic outside because there was so much traffic inside in my head. Um, and I came to realize that it's okay. It's okay that I have that noise in my head. It's something I can work on. I'm not crazy. Um, except for when I talk about the loud noise behind the silence. But the chaos, the stories, the self-talk, all of that stuff, whether it's stress, whether it's sadness or fear or cravings for alcohol, you know, this is not something to ignore or push away. Like my psychiatrist taught me that it's not about choosing happy and ignoring all the other stuff. It's about noticing and being aware of that chaos is there. When I see these people running around in DC, that's what I'm talking about is, are they aware what is happening? Are they present in the moment? Are they noticing what's going on? Or are they just sitting in the back of the bus like and just letting life take them wherever it's headed, you know? Um, do they hear the silence behind all that noise? Do they take time to find peace and calm? Um, and of course, I know that we're not going to see people on the side of the road like finding calm while they're standing at a crosswalk in DC. It's not about forcing ourselves to be calm in a time when you need to be paying attention, but it just really was a great demonstration to me about how much noise is out there, how much noise is also in my head. And together, all of that stuff makes it so difficult to be present and be aware of just where our feet are standing and what's happening right now, like accepting life as it is right now. Um, One thing that came to mind a couple of days ago is this metaphor of a quilt. Like life is like a quilt, not a box of chocolates. It's like a quilt. And I've been thinking about this because I'm trying to put together this quilt with some leftover material that my mom gave me from a bunch of different projects. And so I have this quilt pieced together laying on the floor in front of me. And so I was thinking about, as I was thinking about this topic, is when you focus on one thread or one square of the quilt, you lose the sight of the beauty of the whole quilt. Um, I was talking to the instructor in the sewing class the other day about how I made this quilt for somebody in my life that was important and who has passed. And it was his first quilt that he ever had. It was the only quilt he ever received. And at the center of the quilt, there were two diamonds that came together to a point at the very center of the quilt. And I put the quilt together. So you sew all the rows of the quilt together. You sew all the blocks to make rows, I should say. Let me repeat that. You sew all the fabric blocks together and make a row, just for this particular quilt. And then you sew all the blocks together to make the next row. So then you have all the rows, and then you sew all the rows together. And when I sewed the rows together, guess what? Those 2 points did not meet in the center of the quilt, and it drove me crazy. So I took those two rows apart. So they were like a little misaligned to the left. So I took that row, those two rows apart, like I just separated those rows and I was going to sew them back together, just inch it over slightly. So I sewed them back together and yeah, that's right. They were misaligned a little to the right instead. And I thought, this person that I gave this quilt to is a perfectionist. And I was like, he's going to notice that it's off. It was driving me crazy, but I had to accept it. I had to accept that it was off. You know, when I was just so focused on that point in the center of the quilt being off, I was losing sight of the beauty of the whole quilt. Not only the beauty of the quilt, but the fact that I did it myself. Like it was my first quilt I ever made, and it was his first quilt he ever received. And that was important to me. That meant something to me. And I wasn't going to see that or feel that, enjoy that, embrace that if I got wrapped up in those 2 points that weren't meeting in the middle of the quilt. But when I finally accepted that this is an imperfection that I need to accept, because I'm not going to take it, I'm not going to keep taking it apart and sewing it back together, because eventually I'm going to ruin those rows and make them worse than just not meeting in the middle. Um, so if I then broaden my awareness, I can see how all of the rows, all of the diamonds in the quilt contribute to the entire pattern. And for me, it's like noticing a stressful moment in my life and zooming in to see how that moment is imperfect. You know, I always want to make things perfect, go my way. But my life is made up of a million of those moments. And if I try to perfect each one, I'm going to lose sight of the much larger design of my life. Um, there are so many things that I think I don't accept as they are when they happen in my life. And by trying to grab a hold of things that I can't control, I'm losing sight of the larger design of my life. And this is where one day at a time becomes one moment at a time. Like I broaden my awareness so that I see not just the stress in my life, not just the thing that's imperfect, but see the beauty around that imperfection. You know, it's the silence behind the noise. It's the beauty of the quilt behind the imperfections. Those imperfections make things unique, and that applies in life in so many things. So practicing awareness is something that I've gotten better at, but that's because my life has slowed down. And I think it's important to share what I've experienced because my life has slowed down, to say, while your life is not slowing down like mine, find it. Find the silence behind the noise. Don't wait until your life slows down because something happens to you, you know, like a stroke. Um, don't don't wait for losing your vision to see the beauty of what's around you. Um, for alcoholics, like when cravings hit or stress feels overwhelming, choose to notice the feeling, but then see the beauty of sobriety around it. Um, rather than letting that moment control or try to take hold of the beauty around it. Instead, like, notice a craving, accept that it's a craving. You have a craving because you're an alcoholic. And then choose to focus on the calm that's always there because you have not picked up a drink. And that's the calm that's always there as long as you don't drink, as long as you don't pick up a drink. Um, Notice the feelings, don't ignore them. That's important. Pick up the phone and talk to somebody about it. Those moments are temporary in a much larger, more beautiful design in your life. Those are just temporary moments. They're little imperfections. They are the noise in front of all of that calm silence. I think in recovery, awareness is everything. And I'm grateful that I'm at the point today where I can notice it. I notice in moments that challenge me that it's temporary, it's an imperfection. It's not the way, meaning it's not the way I want it to happen, but that doesn't mean it's imperfect in the design of my life. It's exactly the way that my life is being designed. So it's perfect. It's not imperfect. You know, it may be imperfect from my perspective, but it's not, but it is perfect in the design of my life. And when we step back and look at life as a whole, we can see that beauty and the calm and the silence that is always there waiting for us. So I hope this was inspirational for you. I think it helped me to talk it through. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.